Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone, and welcome to this 14th episode of The Rolling Stone. If you've subscribed to the channel and been around here before, first of all, thank you very much. You kind of know the rules of what goes down here on Fridays as compared to Tuesday, and if this is your first time here on the Stone, first of all, welcome aboard. These videos are different from the ones that I post on Tuesday because you're going to find very few clips and cuts in these videos. This is more stream of consciousness where I give my initial thoughts and impressions about stories that are currently making the rounds in the news. And with the preliminaries out of the way, let's dive right in. And the first story today is the big news that Disney has cast the lead for its live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. 19-year-old singer Halle Bailey, okay? Not to be confused with Halle Berry, this is Halle Bailey. And the reason why this has been in the news like it has, okay, because usually when, a movie is cast, it's like, oh, okay, cool, I guess, But the reason why this story has been around for as long as it has, been making the cycles in the news, is because Halle Bailey is, as a matter of fact, black. And so this, of course, has sparked a whole conversation online about whether, she should have been cast as the Little Mermaid or not. Because remember, the Little Mermaid in the original 1989 animated version was white, red-haired, right? She was a redhead. And since Hans Christian Andersen was Danish when he wrote the original story, people said, she's not supposed to be black. She's supposed to, be European. Well, I personally don't care either way. And this is the main point of this story. If we lived in a perfect world where politics didn't have to invade every single thing, I would just say, look, obviously they cast who knows how many actresses, and Halle Bailey was the best person for the role. I haven't seen her in anything, but I've heard that she can actually sing, unlike certain other people who were cast as the leads in Disney movies. Emma Watson. But Halle Bailey can sing, and from the very little that I have read online and seen on Twitter, she seems very charismatic and able, to pull off the role. And in a regular non-political world where politics didn't invade everything, I would just say, obviously, she beat out all the competition. She was the best choice that there was. And Faith Moore wrote a piece, kind of saying that at the Federalist, saying, Disney probably just went with the best person to actually portray this role, this character in a live action setting. My problem, however, is that I cannot get rid of this nagging suspicious doubt that that was not the entire reason why Disney went with this choice. Again, I'm not attacking Halle Bailey. I couldn't care less what actress Disney got to portray Ariel in the live-action remake. But since we don't live in a normal world, since we live in a world where politics has to intrude upon everything, there is this suspicion in my mind that Disney went with her, chose Halle Bailey because she is black. That Disney was subtly, but also surely, making a political statement. That Disney was actually, engaging in some virtue signaling. That, hey, you know what? We're woke, we're cool, we're hip. You know what? We are all for diversity and for people of color playing lead roles in our movies. We've got it. Because, I've seen other choices that Disney has made, and I've seen other statements of people who have directed Disney movies, people with the Disney company. And there is this suspicion in my mind that I can't prove. I'll say that right off the bat, gang. I can't prove this, but it's a suspicion in my mind. And that just leads to the whole state of art that we find ourselves in because of this insistence that everything has to be politicized, because, you know, that isn't the only news story in regards to entertainment and movies. Disney also came out and said that their live-action remake of Mulan, it's not going to have any songs, never mind that the animated version that they released in the 90s during their Renaissance had songs and lighthearted moments and gags and jokes. You know, it was a typical Disney movie for the time. The director of the 6th Terminator movie now has said that there's going to be a new character in it, a female cyborg named Grace, and that if you are, you know, basically if you're a good male, you're gonna love her, but if you have even just the slightest bit of misogyny in you, she's gonna scare the crap out of you, because, you know, she is a strong, empowered woman. You know, she is woman, hear her roar, things like that. Let's see, I know that also people talking about the remake of the Charlie's Angels movies, they're saying, you know, that the best thing about the trailer that was released a few days ago is that Kristen Stewart's character beat up a bunch of guys in the trailer. And the funny thing about all of these statements, about all of these stories, is that these mainstream movies, they're falling into the same trap as Christian movies. People on the left and the right get after Christian movies, justifiably so, because Christian movies, more often than not, focus on the message instead of the actual story, right? Their characters are one-dimensional, and they only exist to move the plot forward, and the plot is just the basket to hold the message or the theme of the movie. And that is a legitimate criticism against the majority of Christian movies that get made here in this day and age. Well, these movie studios are doing the exact same thing. I don't care about female empowerment in movies. I don't care if, you know, one character is black or white. I don't care about if the cyborg character is male or female. I just want a good movie. I want a good, enjoyable, entertaining movie that doesn't insult my intelligence, that doesn't insult the intelligence of anybody who goes to see it, that has good, complex, well-written characters, well-written dialogue, because that's the point of art. Art is supposed to reflect the truth, but it's not supposed to hammer you over the head with the truth. You're supposed to be able to enjoy it. You're not supposed to feel like your senses are being assaulted, you know, by a sledgehammer or anything like that. But that's where we are finding ourselves, because the very idea of art, movies, books, television, whatever, the very idea of art is being subsumed into this idea that it has to be political in order to be good. It has to be political in order for it to mean something. And not only that, but it has to be of a certain persuasion of politics, right? It has to be on the left. It has to be ideological in order for it to actually be good or true. So, that's the first story that we have. Again, not attacking Halle Bailey. You know, all success to her. This is a great opportunity for her, especially when she's just 19 years old. My argument in that specific story is with the Disney company, and my argument in general is just with this trend that movies can no longer be apolitical, right? They have to be political. No matter what the subject matter is, no matter what the story is, it has to be political. So, that's the first story. The second story actually feeds into our first one because it has to do with, oh boy, Megan Rapinoe, okay, the captain of the U.S. women's national soccer team, who just won their 4th World Cup, I believe, and the 2nd one in a row. So, you know, congrats, mazel tov to them. But the lionization that people have been building around Rapinoe has gotten to the point of not just ridiculousness, but it's almost sickening that it has become, I mean, the level of pandering has reached the level of sickening when it comes to her. And what do I mean by that? Well, earlier this week on Twitter, the hashtag Rapinoe for president was actually trending. And they even threw out this faux presidential poll where they threw Rapinoe versus Trump. And they said, oh my gosh, you know, if she actually ran against Trump, she would actually beat him 42 to 41%. There was that. When Rapinoe and the team came back from Europe, where they were playing the World Cup, New York City threw a ticker tape parade in their honor, right? Nike released a 1-minute hagiography of the team, where they even implied that Rapinoe or some members of the team should be put onto Mount Rushmore. And we've just seen this veneration of them, saying, you know, pointing to them, saying, you know, they're American heroes. This is what America is all about. She's uniting us. She is not, you know, dividing us, etc., etc., etc. And the reason for all of this, again, the cynical, suspicious part of my mind is saying that the reason for all of this isn't because that Rapinoe herself is a good soccer player. It's not because she actually led her teammates to winning, you know, the second World Cup consecutively. It's because she became political. First, of course, you had her stunt where she was kneeling for the national anthem in solidarity, she said, with Colin Kaepernick. Then, of course, she said before she and her team had even been invited to the White House, she said that she would never accept an invitation to the White House because, of course, you know, Trump is the reincarnation of Hitler, Mussolini, or you know, pick the fascist dictator of the 20th century out of a hat, and that's what Trump is at this given moment. And so that's the reason why I'm convinced of it, because people have known that because this isn't the first time that she's been playing soccer. People have known that she's a good soccer player. But all of a sudden now, she is being, I mean, lofted to such heights. And that's because she's going political. She went political, which makes it rather ironic, actually, when she said that she wasn't going to go to the White House. She and her teammates weren't going to go to the White House because they didn't want to give a platform to Trump. They didn't want their image, their brand, you know, their faces associating with Trump and his political vision, which of course they completely abhor. And the funny thing is, the ironic thing is that, of course, they're building up Trump's platform. Of course they are. Because we exist in such a polarized society that if you claim to be completely against Trump, you're building up Trump's platform and his base. And vice versa. When people say that they are going to oppose AOC and Ilhan Omar, you're building up their base too. That's just the nature of the beast, where we're in this cycle of feeding, right? When we oppose something, we're actually feeding it, because the acolytes on the other side take that as fuel to fan their fires. So that's the one thing. But the second thing, and the thing that I really wanted to drive home, much like with our first story with Ariel and the Little Mermaid remake, is that we are losing again something that used to unite us. A couple of years ago, 1.5, 2 years ago, something like that. Actually, I think it was last year. My apologies. It was last year. Ben Shapiro wrote a piece for the Daily Wire, okay, his website and news site. He was talking about how he and a couple of other members of his family had gone to a baseball game. And he commented that the stadium was full, right? It was a full stadium. And he said, the stadium is full not just because it's all filled with Republicans, right? The stadium isn't just filled with Republicans. It isn't just filled with Democrats. It isn't just filled with conservatives. It isn't just filled with liberals. There's a mixing of people here. There are Republicans, Democrats, independents. There are conservatives, liberals, and, you know, everyone in between. Different flavors of liberals and leftists, different flavors of conservatives and people on the right. But what is actually bringing them all here together It's their love of baseball, and they're wanting to experience something together. Again, that being the baseball game. And he commented that there are fewer and fewer of those things that are actually there in society that can unite us. Again, because everything has become political. The personal, like the second wave feminists said, the personal has become political. Well, the problem with that is that when everything is just reduced to pure, unadulterated politics, if someone is opposing your politics, opposing your political ideas, or the political ideas that you defend, then they are obviously the enemy. And you can't have anything to do with them. They're the enemy, they must be defeated. It's not just that their ideas have to be defeated, it's that they themselves, as a defender of those ideas, they have to be defeated and crushed as well. And Shapiro said, a society, a civilization, can't exist with that balance. It can't exist in that environment because there have to be reasons for people to stay united and to stay one society, to stay as one civilization. And that's why we had things in the past that didn't rely on pure politics. We just didn't. We could enjoy sports. We could enjoy, our clubs, like knitting clubs, Boy Scouts, because they weren't political, unlike now. We could enjoy movies. Again, Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, name all sorts of great movies. They weren't overtly political. In fact, very often than not, there really were no politics in it. We could come together, we could enjoy this experience. And while we were enjoying the experience, we could actually see the person across the aisle from us as just a fellow American, a fellow person, a fellow lover of sports, movies, knitting, rugby, coin collecting, whatever it was, which reminded us then of the humanity of that other guy, because we had something in common with each other. Hey, I like movies, he likes movies too. You know what? He's probably not a bad guy. And that was able to either remind us that people who had different ideas politically from us, they weren't monsters, or even better, it made us, completely forget about politics for a while and reminded us that there are other things in life besides politics, and that there are other things that can unite us besides politics. But because, like with art, sports are becoming politicized. They have to become politicized almost, because that is where the clicks are now. Because now that we are in this virtue signaling society, in order to get people onto your side, in order to get noticed, in order, to really become the face of a movement, you have to become politicized. You have to politicize yourself. You have to draw these parameters around yourself, and then you have to go on the attack on everyone else, subtly or not, right? Implicitly or not. And that's what's happened. And that means that there are less and less things that can actually unite us. And we're all being broken down into these camps. And civilization, Ben Shapiro's right, civilization can't survive that. A culture can't survive that. So that's our second story, which is kind of a somber note. And our third and last story for this week has to do with Zack Ford. Zack Ford is the LGBTQIA plus whatever writer over at Big Think. And he's started a weekly newsletter called Crossing the River Styx, which is a interesting title, if I may say so. But in the very first issue of his newsletter, he recounted a story that had actually just happened to him around Independence Day. He said that he was on Facebook, and on his feed came a picture of a friend of his. It's a woman that he's known since high school, okay? And it was a woman with her daughter sitting on her lap, and she was wearing a MAGA hat, right? One of President Trump's hats. Now, Zack Ford said in his newsletter that he has known, has been completely aware that his friend had different political ideas and beliefs than he. Okay? So this wasn't a big revelation. Okay? He knew where she stood politically. But this picture enraged him so much that he actually told her, he messaged her and said, you cannot post pictures of yourself wearing MAGA hats on Facebook anymore, because if you keep doing that, I might keep seeing them in my feed, and I don't want to see you in a MAGA hat. So stop wearing MAGA hats. Stop posting pictures of yourself wearing MAGA hats or anything like that. And the woman, tried to defend herself, and he just was having none about it, was shooting down all of her arguments through dime store lawyering. And finally, it ended up with him actually unfriending her. Okay? A woman that he's known since high school and with whom he said he was friends with. He unfriended her because she refused to acquiesce to his demands that she stop posting pictures of herself on her own Facebook page wearing a certain kind of headgear. I could say a lot of things about this, but the point that I really want to make from this story is that this shows why ideologues can never really be your friends. You can be friends with an ideologue. I don't know how long that's going to last, but you can do it. People of good faith who are non-ideological, they can be friends. That doesn't mean that you're not going to argue. That doesn't mean that you have to nod your head and agree with everything that they say or do. No, that's not the point. But you can be friends with people who don't think exactly like you. Ideologues can't do that because ideologues can never honestly, truly be your friend. Okay, so let's take a step back, okay, and let's look at this. First of all, if you're a friend to someone, that means that you want what is best for them. That, when you dig down to bedrock, that's the definition of a friend. Wanting what is best, the genuine best for your friend, okay? Now, if Zack Ford really honestly believes that the MAGA hat is the 21st equivalent of a swastika, why did he demand that his friend just not post pictures of herself wearing the MAGA hat? Because remember, think about that for an instant, okay? He didn't mind if she kept wearing what he thinks is the 21st century equivalent of a swastika. He just didn't want her posting pictures of herself wearing what he thinks is the 21st century equivalent of the swastika because he didn't want to see it. Okay, so it even wasn't the fact that she was wearing the hat. It was that he saw her wearing the hat that offended him so much. If he honestly, truly, genuinely believed that the MAGA hat equals a swastika, why did he make this bizarre, argument? Why did he make this bizarre demand? Because if he was really a friend to this woman, he would have been appalled that she was wearing, the 21st century equivalent of a swastika. He would have not unfriended her. He would have stayed friends with her because he would have wanted her to stop wearing the hats altogether, because he would know that it's better to not wear a swastika or its equivalent than to wear a swastika or its equivalent, right? It's better to not align yourself with what you genuinely, supposedly, believe are the equivalent of modern day Nazis than to not be one. So he would have argued with her. He would have tried to convince her that, hey, you know what, this hat stands for racism, transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia, jingoism, all these horrible bad things, okay? I don't want you to wear this hat because I don't want you in that camp, because I want what's best for you, and what's best for you is not to align yourself with these bad things or these bad people, right? A real friend would have done that. A real friend would not have just, made this bizarre demand that I don't care if you align yourself with Nazis, just do it so I don't have to see it. And then when his friend tried to, argue with him, when it got past a certain point, he just wouldn't have unfriended her and basically said, I don't care what happens to you, burn in hell. A real friend wouldn't have done that. And before I leave, okay, I'm just going to ask, where are the feminists on this? Where are the feminists pounding down Zack Ford's door to make him repent for what he did? Because not only did he show himself not to be a true friend, but he was also trying to police a woman's body, telling her what she could and could not wear, and then telling her what sort of pictures she could or couldn't post on her Facebook page, on her own Facebook page. If that is not policing a woman's body, I don't know what is. But anyway, that's the Zack Ford story, showing that ideologues, for however much they might claim to love people, to love humanity, true, honest-to-God ideologues don't. Okay? They may love humanity in the abstract, but they don't love people, because it's much easier just to discard people with whom they disagree than to actually take the time and try to convince them of the error of their ways and work towards their genuine good. They don't think like that. But anyway, I have been talking long enough, so I am going to sign off now. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, everyone, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Ciao.